Hey everyone, it's Jason and Thomas here. We're on episode 13 of the Week in Strange. I hope you can all on Facebook Live hear and see us right now. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties with the intro here. Timothy's not going to be joining us this evening, so I'll be hosting. And Thomas, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty cool, Jason. I'm feeling a lot better now and a bit tired, a bit run down, but I'm not feeling sick. So it's delighted to be here. And yeah, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Brian, thanks for letting me know the intro's not playing. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. There's some kind of glitch. It froze on my screen here. Carrie, hey. Mom, hello. Kathy, hi. Helen, hello. Thank you all for joining in on the chat today. We're going to go ahead and kick this off with our first story. And this is one that says, the title is Earth's Inner Core is Growing Lopsided. Here's why the planet isn't tipping. Now, I'm curious to see how this one's going to pan out. But what it says here is more than 5,000 kilometers beneath us, Earth's solid metal core wasn't discovered until 1936. Almost a century later, we are still struggling to answer basic questions about when and how it formed. These aren't easy puzzles to solve. We can't directly sample the inner core, so the key to unraveling its mysteries lies in collaboration between seismologists who indirectly sample it with seismic waves, geodynamicists who create models of its dynamics, and mineral physicists who study the behavior of iron alloys at high pressure and temperatures. Combining these disciplines, scientists have discovered an important clue about what's happening miles beneath our feet. In a new study, they reveal how Earth's inner core is growing faster on one side than the other, which could help explain how old the inner core is and the intriguing history of Earth's magnetic field. Early Earth. Earth's core was formed very early in our planet's 4.5 billion year history, within the first 200 million years. Gravity pulled the heavier iron to the center of the young planet, leaving rocky silicate minerals to make up the mantle and crust. Earth's formation captured a lot of heat within the planet. The loss of this heat and heating by ongoing radioactive decay have since driven our planet's evolution. Heat loss in the Earth's interior drives the vigorous flow in the liquid iron outer core, which creates Earth's magnetic field. Meanwhile, cooling within the Earth's deep interior helps power plate tectonics, which shape the surface of our planet. As Earth cooled over time, the temperature at the center of the planet eventually dropped below the melting point of iron at extreme pressures, and the inner core started to crystallize. Today, the inner core continues to grow at roughly 1 millimeter in radius each year, which equates to the solidification of 8,000 tons of molten iron every second. In billions of years, this cooling will eventually lead to the whole core becoming solid, leaving Earth without its protective magnetic field. Okay, and this just goes on to explain some more physics about that. And so basically it's saying something weird that the core of the Earth is a little lopsided. Now, again, I think this just might be one of those weird articles trying to deny the concept that there's a pole shift going on. But it's just interesting that they bring up the magnetism in it, because that's just been kind of a consistent theme across this show here, and as well as some other things we've talked about how the magnetic shielding of the Earth has such a important role in protecting us from the outer the radiation coming in from space. But also there seems to be some kind of psychic connection that we all life forms, not just humans, but all the animals have with the magnetic field of the Earth's of the Earth. But yeah, Thomas, I wanted to get your thoughts about the whole thing.
Well, the whole inner Earth molten core thing, it's just a theory now. It's impossible to prove, and it's only speculated upon because they can send sound waves or something down into the Earth, and they bounce them back. But they don't know what's down there. That's just a theory. I mean, that the so-called molten core is thousands of miles down there, and there are things to say. Well, they when they dig really deep shafts like they have in Russia, they've done deep ones. It gets much warmer the deeper they go, but they still haven't penetrated the Earth's crust. And that heat could be generated by the Earth's crust rolling along the outside. That's where all the lava is generated, or friction between the inner and outer core, between the crust and the inside of the Earth. So that would explain the lava. Now, this thing it grows by 1 millimeter a year. It kind of reminds me of the expanding Earth theory. that it's like a balloon in the middle blowing everything out. Now, they also say they also see, although the flat Earth thing is bullshit, the flat Earth folks do bring up things that should be questioned, and one of them is this belief that magnetism is caused by an iron magnet in the middle of the Earth. This thing, right? Now, why would an iron magnet draw down gases that are a higher atomic weight, but they have no iron in them? And see, this is the thing. We know that there's gases float in the atmosphere, but they're not affected by gravity. They are affected by gravity, but they're not affected by an iron magnet pulling them down, because that's why you have radon. It's a heavier atomic weight in your basement, and you have like ozone, which is way up in the upper atmosphere. It's a much lighter atomic weight. And that's why the atmosphere is not a pressurized system. It doesn't work like that. It's literally gases being held by their atomic weight. So there's no pressurized system between the Earth and outer space. And the air pressure is simply caused by all this weight going down top of us. It's the weight of these gases. But I don't know. I mean, that's the first thing I thought of when you said a millimeter a year. That's expanding air theory. Now, I'm not a millimeter, nothing, but like we all know that like you can suddenly have an earthquake that moves a millimeter a year, and then one day there's a jolt and it jumps 20 feet. So maybe that's the expanding earth thing. That seems to be quite a plausible theory to me, except it doesn't account for where the actual mass comes from. That's where it does, unless what I mean. It doesn't. Where does the mass come from?
Right.
Nothing. But the one way it could happen is that the Earth's mass is exactly the same as it was when the Earth was small, assuming but there's a balloon type thing in the middle, a massive balloon type thing that's probably empty, and that's pushing out like a balloon. So that way the mass is the same. See, a balloon when it's no air in it, it's the same mass as when it's blown up, right? So the same thing with this expanding air theory. Kind of, you don't need to have extra mass, because if the interior is blowing out all the time, the mass is the same anyway. So I mean, I think you're right about that. I think it's another one of our stories to cover for, the magnetism issues and possibly a pole flip and so on. But I've never been fully sold on the molten inner core thing.
Right.
It's they never, when they get down there, I'll believe them. But there could be anything down there. It could be, it could be anything. It could be a hole full of gas. We just don't know.
And when you were talking about accounting for new material, it made me think of, is it TIG welding, where they're able to use a plasma that directs particles over that plasma wave? And I was thinking, if there's some kind of phenomena like that between the sun and the earth, or something in the earth, where an electrical charge can go in to, if we'll just call it the core or the center of the earth, and be able to create new material. Just like, so it'd have to be some kind, like, is it TIG welding? Is that the one where it puts like a bead out that's through some kind of plasma? Yeah, something like that.
There's also thousands of tons of material comes from space. It comes in the form of sand. It comes in the form of small pebbles. It burns up in the atmosphere, but that still is deposited as carbon and other things. You don't have to have an and you add that by billions of years, you've got an accumulation of, a mass stuff coming from outer space. It's like building your planet up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the lopsided thing. What's the first thing you think of? Well, when it's spinning.
Yeah. Creates a vibration. Yeah.
And that could be. This could be there, and a wobble, right? A wobble.
Right. Yeah.
This could be there. I mean, I don't know. Have you ever worked with someone that had a flywheel in it, and you do anything to that flywheel, like even chip a tiny piece off, it literally destroys the machine that it's in. And that's why there was a train developed in England, a little small train that was run by a flywheel to store energy, and they had to get rid of it because it was the health and safety thing. If that flywheel shipwrecked, it would have blown up inside the train and killed everyone in it. So I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. That it's like that. It's a wobble, but I think it's an excuse. I don't. I mean, it's all theory. It's all. I mean, I'm not Mr. completely skeptical of science, but we're still flying on conjecture and theories and things like that. And the assumption is that these theories are often, because of there's two ways science can work. You have the rope, the the steel bar method, and then you have the rope method, right? And sorry, the chain link method, right? So currently they love the chain link method. So for everything to work, you have to build upon the previous chain link, right? So even if it's faulty down here, you're still building on it. And if something fails at the bottom, the whole thing collapses. Where was another theories of classical science as like a rope that has different strands inside it. And if one fails, the rope still continues on. So I think a lot of these theories like that are just leftovers of things from the past that we just don't really know. And I think I'm thinking of two things when you say that story: the expanding Earth thing. Maybe that's true. It's a fascinating idea. And they're trying to hide the pole shift.
Yeah, and also the whole idea about it growing every year. Reading between the lines, it's as if they're trying to make this like a man-made climate change kind of guilt thing of they'll somehow blame it on like man's carbon emission or something, they'll continue this, we're making the earth grow by adding new carbon, because that seems to be their latest thing over the last few years, is this idea of reducing a carbon footprint. And it's just, I think they're going to bank on that more and more. Like nowadays, when you get like a travel credit card, you can get like, when you use it, you can get your points redeemed for like travel miles or something. And now there's options to have it go towards reducing your carbon footprint. It's like, what the fuck does that even do? Like it's just some
it goes to the bank. It's a scam. But they'll say anything. Do you remember the Indonesian tsunami? That was caused by an underground earthquake, and they said that a few media outlets ran with the thing. It was caused by climate change. A fucking earthquake under this. They're literally, they're parasites. They're absolute liars. I mean, they'll gaslight anything. I mean, if an asteroid was coming, they'd say it was caused by climate change. I remember Stephen Hawking even saying that we better not contact aliens because if they find out about our carbon footprints, they'll come and destroy us. He actually said that was when he wasn't slipping on the ramp at Epstein Island.
Right. Yeah. It's just that thing. It's original sin just dressed up in modern wokeism terms, doesn't matter what era you live in, they've always got some kind of template there to make people feel guilty about existing. And they will do that. And, the merchants of fear, the media, will always find some way of making the youngest generation feel guilty for even existing and just trying to have a normal life, like having a car to go to work and all of those things. Yeah.
And pay those carbon tithes and clean the area indulgences.
Right.
And to get God doesn't destroy you. Yeah. So
this one, this next story is going to go kind of in line with this, about what some of the climatologists and all those bullshitters will talk about. But this is the title for this story is Firm Raises $15 million to Bring Back Woolly Mammoth from Extinction. 10,000 years after woolly mammoths vanished from the face of the earth, scientists are embarking on an ambitious project to bring the beasts back to the Arctic tundra. The prospect of recreating mammoths and returning them to the wild has been discussed seriously at times for more than a decade. But on Monday, researchers announced fresh funding they believe could make their dream a reality. The boost comes in the form of $15 million, 11 million pounds, raised by the bioscience and genetics company Colossal, co-founded by Ben Lamb, a tech software entrepreneur, and George Church, a professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School, who has pioneered new approaches to gene editing. The scientists have set their initial sights on creating an elephant-mammoth hybrid by making embryos in the laboratory that carry mammoth DNA. The starting point for the project involves taking skin cells from Asian elephants, which are threatened with extinction, and reprogramming them into more versatile stem cells that carry mammoth DNA. The particular genes that are responsible for mammoth hair, insulating the fat layers, and other cold climate adaptations are identified by comparing mammoth genomes extracted from animals recovered from the permafrost with those from related Asian elephants. These embryos would then be carried to term in a surrogate mother or potentially in an artificial womb. If all goes to plan and hurdles are far from trivial, the researchers hope to have their first set of calves in 6 years. Our goal is to make, this is quote, our goal is to make a cold-resistant elephant. but it's going to look and behave like a mammoth, not because we're trying to trick anybody, but because we want something that is functionally equivalent to the mammoth, that will enjoy its time at negative 40 degrees Celsius and do all the other things that elephants and mammoths do, in particular knocking down trees. Church told the Guardian. Man, this is like Jurassic Park, you know, dino DNA.
It's such bullshit. They're not even making a mammoth. They're making a hybrid. Also, that's Asian elephants are related. Asian elephants are very small. Have you ever seen them? They're not that big. They're, you know, well, they're big enough, but they're not like the ones you see in Africa, which are, well, mammoths were huge. Mammoths were bigger than even African elephants. So why are they picking a small elephant? That's not true about the Asian elephant being an endangered species. You go to Asia, they're everywhere. You know what the biggest issue is? This is me and my animal rights thing. The biggest issue with Asian elephants is unemployment and alcoholism. I know that sounds. Well, that's true though. A lot of Asian elephants used to work in the logging industry, and because these eco-environmental heads stopped all logging, not just you see what happened was they stopped all the big industrial logging, but they stopped all the small loggers too. So these small logging companies, elephants used to work. This is where the elephants used to work, and they were looked after, and they were valuable and taken care of. And so the logging companies cut down, so the elephants are just left to run wild, and they're bored. I saw documentaries about the elephants are bored, and what they do is they drink. I know we're going off topic here, but they get drunk on fruit. What they do is they pull fruit out of trees like mangoes, and they let it sit there in the sun for a few days and come back, and it's alcohol. And there's alcoholism is a huge problem with elephants, and they go on rampages and get into trouble and everything, and it's really sad. And instead of like bringing this freak of nature back that nobody wants, why could these biotech fuckers and all these types do something to help Asian elephants that really do? They're not in you know, give them purpose to their lives again or something, or you know, because that's the problem. These are elephants have been generations in with humans. They were thrown back into the wild, and they don't know how to be wild again, because they're like a horse, you know, like a horse that was been raised in a stable. They can't go back and live in the wild, you know. And yeah, I mean, I think these people are just horrible. I just think they're looking for people to notice them, and it's just Frankenstein shit, and it's wrong. And it brings down all kinds of other slippery slopes. They'll start doing human weird hybrids and stuff like that, like the way, you know, Kyle's father had a dolphin plasty in South Park. He made it into a dolphin. It'd be like that. No, I'm totally against this. It's not a mammoth. If they were actually getting a mammoth and they were bringing it back to life, and they say something like they were able to actually create an egg, an embryo, and put it inside an African elephant and birth a mammoth, that would be interesting. I mean, ethically, it'd still be weird, but it'd be still interesting. But these are just super rich bastards with big egos who are just like looking to make themselves get names. That's all this is.
Right. And
playing God.
Yeah. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
In the Guardian, this being a Guardian article, it's just they've got this way of portraying the biotech industry and all these tech nerds and all these people as like the new priest class of this current era. So it's like if they flood social media and the mainstream media with enough of this information, it's just like, you know, throw enough metal on the wall and some will stick, right? So it's just this idea that the destiny of the future of mankind is in the hands of the biotech industry.
Yeah.
And just, you know, and they slip in those little, like artificial womb. And it's just like this little, you know, neurolinguistic programming type of thing of just getting these ideas out there where they might not even have the technology yet to, you know, Jurassic Park style. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just these are gods you must worship.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially with right now with the Rona and with this idea that it was a chimera, right? Where you take two different life forms and splice them. And I was having a conversation with, I'm trying to remember whom it was, but I posted something in the group about a week ago where something like this was done, where they were using CRISPR, the gene editing software that all these biotech companies use. And as an aside on that, even another aside from the aside, I know a lot of people in the Seattle area that are, you know, adepts or whatever, masters of using CRISPR, and they talk about it as casually as they would talk about, you know, Microsoft Paint or like Microsoft Excel or something. They talk about like, oh yeah, no big deal, you know, just using CRISPR, and they work with these things. And these are people that are, you know, they have maybe 2 degrees, but it's just like, you know, these people are in their late 20s, just going along with whatever the blueprint is that their executives who have the money, who are funding them to do this gene editing. And, you know, they take it so casually as if it's no big deal to be messing around with natural law and making these chimeras. And it's like, somebody made a comment, it's like, oh, well, people have been doing this for the longest time with grafting. And it's like, well, no, grafting is something that is natural, where you take, you know, a lemon tree and you can graft on an avocado branch, and you do that. And, you know, that's not making a chimera. It's the same kind of thing. Grafting genetically would be like taking a horse and a donkey and making a mule, right? And that's done through sexual natural procreation, and the 2 species have a close enough genetic makeup where they can make a hybrid of the mule, right? So when you go into making chimeras, these combined viruses, bacterias, and small, you know, multicellular organisms out of 2 different things. So like they took, I'm not going to say the names here, but they took a one thing and they spliced it with a this to make a that, so that they can have the Rona. It's like, that's very different than going about and doing grafting. Like, yes, grafting has been around since as long as, you know, people have been, since the cradle of civilization, allegedly, with, you know, making wheat and all that. Yeah, there's always been things like that. But this is different when you're going in there with software. And I'm not sure how the software electronic interface is with some kind of 3D printed thing, where I think what they do is they actually hit with a really small amount of radiation. They'll hit certain parts of the genetic code to either switch it on or switch it off. So they basically have an operating system that gets installed in whatever line of DNA stranding it is. So if they want to put something like a switch, a gate with just, you know, on off, they can install that and hit it with the right frequency to trigger that gate. Just like, you know, our computers work off of logic gates and stuff. You know, you just have to hit the right sequence with whatever hardware interface it is, whatever hardware electronic interface that they're using with CRISPR to do this stuff. They can just zap it. So again, getting really off topic with this, but I think it's just this idea that these biotech people are the new gods, and that they should be venerated by the public. And, you know, there's just so many young, you know, 20-somethings that I know that work with CRISPR just like it's no big deal. Like they're talking about making a PowerPoint presentation, but, you know, they're talking about gene splicing, and it's not like, oh, they're making GMOs. And no, they're working with all the stuff with the needlecraft type things, and with again, they're chimeras, you know, when you're combining 2 species of things unnaturally. And I wonder what the effects of this too, as they're creating these chimeras, what happens, especially on a bacteriological level with the food chain, when you have a bigger bacteria eating this fake bacteria. It's going to affect the larger bacteria, and then it's going to affect bugs and the birds that eat those bugs, and the things that eat those birds. And at what point, like, are they creating a domino effect there? Whether if you affect something on the microcosm in such a weird, unnatural way, how long, you know, to what extent does that thing go and become an invasive species type of thing? Just like the way if you bring in, something
they don't even know what life is.
Right.
No scientist can tell you what life is or how it's created. They cannot do life. So here they are affecting it. It'll end up like the fucking movie, the Mist, with all these like weird animals coming out of like nowhere to like attack people. Yeah. No, instead of getting excited about a half-assed mammoth, a Coldplay version of a mammoth, an Ed Sheeran version of a mammoth, go give money to those African elephant sanctuaries that are taking care of these unemployed elephants and giving them lives instead of taking them off the streets. That's what you need to do. And fuck these biotech scumbags. I'm sick of them.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on here to the next one. And this, again, kind of goes in the logical progression from the last thing, where we're talking about editing life and these people not knowing what life is or even what it means to be human. So this is an article from futurism.com. It says, researchers propose sprinkling hundreds of chips into human brain. They believe it could help and treat epilepsy and Parkinson's. And these are not potato chips. These are not tortilla chips. These are microcomputer chips. So Scientists from Brown University have created tiny microchips designed to be scattered over the brain's surface or even within its tissue in order to collect an unprecedented wealth of neural data. The researchers call the chips, quote unquote, neurograins, according to Wired. Each is roughly the size of a grain of salt and are intended to be spread throughout brain tissue where it can record brain activity. According to a recent paper about the work published in the journal Nature Electronics. Each grain has enough microelectronics stuffed into it so that when embedded in neural tissue, it can listen to neuronal activity on one hand, and then can also transmit it as a tiny little radio to the outside world. Arto Neuromico, a neuroengineer at Brown University and lead author of study, told Wired. The team has only one impediment, the neurograins in rodents so far. Oh, excuse me. The team has only implemented the neurograins into rodents so far, but they're hoping to do so in the same do the same in human subjects. During one of the experiments, they placed 48 neurograins in the cerebral cortex of a rat while it was under anesthesia, focusing primarily on the motor and sensory areas of the brain. The scientists were able to record cortical activity of the animal, but ultimately found that the signal quality wasn't as good as those coming from chips and in most existing brain-computer interfaces. So they're saying here there are already brain-computer interfaces, and I know they've got, what is it, the colloquial implant where they do something where for people who are hard of hearing. I don't think they're necessarily talking about that, but they say right here there wasn't quite as good as those coming from the chips used in most existing brain-computer interfaces. Something to take note of, everyone. But if they can improve the outward quality of the system, the researchers told Wired, they hope that it could provide a way to study larger swaths of the brain, such as the complex networks that control things, including memory and decision-making. Oh, shit. Wow. Again, they hope that it could provide a way to study larger swaths of the brain, such as complex networks that control things, including memory and decision-making. Again, take note. When it comes to how brains work, the whole reality is more important than the sum of the parts. Chantal Pratt, an associate professor of psychology at the University of Washington, told Wired. Man, this article is just written really awkward. I've got to say that. Sometimes when these things come out, they put the syntax of these sentences in a weird order, and it makes them really difficult to read. It's like they're kind of bamboozling you.
Well, that's why I was hired as a communications consultant to teach these idiots how to read and write. That's literally because they don't have those. They don't have to tell a story. And look. What I find amazing is where the regulatory bodies for this stuff. You know, where's the regulate? Like, if you the house that you're living in now, if you decide, let's build an extension, let's build a shed out the back. I bet you wherever the town court ordinance is or the town codes are, you would probably have to go through all kinds of paperwork downtown, and then have an engineer come out. Any kind of structural work would be a civil engineer. There's a place where you can't even paint your houses certain colors without getting the county engineer to approve it. Yeah, you can actually, these people can actually affect the fundamentals of existence of human biology. And there's, without any kind of regulations say how controlled is this? How can this escape? You know, and you see, this is another thing too, Jason. This is like the Rona again. There's absolutely no doubt that was a gain of function process that escaped from the lab in Wuhan. There's no doubt about it. Now, the reason why they're playing it down and told it was everything from bat soup to a wet market was because they don't want the public knowing how much dangerous research and free-for-all research is going on around the world with biotech, with genetics, with virology, and all this other stuff. If people were to find out how dangerous the world is right now, I believe because of this nonsense, we're a far more dangerous place than we ever were during the Cold War and the proliferation of atomic weapons. I think we're in a far more dangerous place. And I keep asking myself, who's the regulatory body behind this? Where are they? Who monitors these research projects and ensures public safety? It's just incredible to me. It's like 5G. 5G was released, you know, again, like if they're building, say, a road extension or a light rail or something, the amount of planning that a city or the local government has to go through just to build a mile of like light rail or a mile of road is enormous. Yet a telecoms company can do what the hell it wants with 5G because we can't see it, we can't physically see it. That seems to be the thing. You can't see the virus, you can't see the microchip. They seem to have this attitude like once it's so small and so tiny and you can't see it, yeah, it's not a problem.
Right. And there's this whole idea too of consent that they're getting where they can just do these trials on people like military service members and prisoners. And then the wording of this really reminded me of the book Chaos about Charles Manson and MK Ultra, and something particular in the Haight-Ashbury clinic there in San Francisco in the late 1960s, early 1970s, where they were experimenting with MK Ultra, you know, the mind control program, where they were doing it through drugs and hypnotism. And one thing that stood out at me that reminds me of this is they referred to in their lab notes, the subjects, they referred to them as rats. And sometimes they're referred to as mice. And it's like, no, the rats and mice that they were working with were these people who were coming in to use the free STD clinic. Because, you know, they had the CIA had a cutout, and this whole video is probably going to get taken down now. But the CIA had a cutout there in San Francisco that was like a hippie house, a hippie commune, where they had all these people coming in, free love and all that stuff, and getting all their STDs, and then taking them all over to the Haight-Ashbury with the handler. His name was something West, Jolliard West was the handler for Manson and a few of the other ones. He was allegedly a civilian, but no, he was CIA, he was a spook. And they would bring them into the Haight-Ashbury, give them all their injections and everything. And part of the agreement was that, you know, all this other stuff that was being worked on, where they experimented with LSD, they experimented with, I think, mescaline, with amphetamines, and these ideas of heavy hypnotism. And some of it was done with magnetics, with electronics, and they were just, you know, and who knows, you were talking about the Cold War, Thomas. I imagine it's like, yeah, a lot of this stuff was really the global military arms throughout the 1950s. It's like as soon as the atom bomb was dropped, it's like, yeah, the next field of weaponry is no longer going to be fought on the battlefield, the physical one, but I'm certain they went into, you know, the human mind. You know, you had remote viewing was becoming a thing, and it's like allegedly the US started doing remote viewing studies because the Russians had it, the Soviets had it. And, you know, they were using sorcery. And I would imagine, you know, when we're talking about some of the Wunderwaffe within the Third Reich, I would imagine, you know, we talked about this again, that it might have been some kind of occult technology, some kind of pathologically, or some kind of occult technology that was being used as a weapon. And it's like there's kind of that fine line there between the physical and the non-physical when you go into the world of the mind, and how influenced the mind is. Just like we talked about magnetism earlier, you can create schizophrenic-like symptoms with someone by bombarding them with enough electromagnetic radiation. That's what they did in the Philadelphia experiment, right? Where they took all those sailors out there and they put them between coils and just zapped them with like, I don't know how many milligauss it was, but they just a tremendous amount of magnetism to create hallucinations. And I think what they ended up doing with that project is, since they were all hallucinating the same trip, they actually manifested that thing into reality. And that's why something really weird happened, because it was like a shared mock-up that all the sailors were having, and that collective brain power and psychic power ended up bringing something forward, the way that Crowley did, for instance, when he left the Abramelin operation when he was there at Boleskine, and then manifested, you know, a brontosaurus or something, whatever it was, into Lake Loch Ness, right? It's like, that's what I think sometimes, is like he made some kind of time slip there, and the Loch Ness monster is actually some kind of something that once existed that is somehow in between time, space, reality. Yeah, a ghost of it, like a
and then
not
footprint.
Right. And I think, yeah, and the same thing is occurring now with this, where they're if they want to take control over people's like I said, thoughts and decision making faculties within the brain, and they talk about this just being a dust. And I know that there's we can find plenty of conspiracy theories about the needlecraft and the things that are in it, But I just wonder with the, the nanotechnology and what is it? Is it graphene oxide that they're putting in it? All of them? It's like, I know, we can find stuff about, nanotech like that, but they're talking about this openly now, which means that this has been in development since probably the 1970s, at least 1980s, since, microprocessors got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller by like the mid 90s into the the mid 80s into the 1990s. I would imagine they've been working with these kind of interfaces between the computer and the nervous system for a few decades now.
I was practicing this ritual with a witch once, and it was the invisibility thing. And you put the candle behind your head and you stare into a mirror, and it absolutely works. You become invisible. But what happens is before you become invisible, you're getting results as your face disappears, your face vanishes, because your face is almost like a kind of an energetic footprint in this reality to kind of like ground you in here. And that's the facial features has vanished first, and then the next thing is your head vanishes and you see the candle behind you. And there was DARPA research done in the 80s where they're putting magnets in Air Force guys' helmets and stuff like that, and they were seeing gray aliens, and they were saying that first they would see the alien with no face, and then its face would appear. And they were saying it was hallucination, but it wasn't. They were going into other realms. They were going into other realities. The consciousness was going to other realities. The movie Jacob's Ladder with Timothy Hutton is actually based on a true story of these combat troops in Vietnam. They pumped full of this unbelievable hallucinogenic drug, and all kind of crazy shit happened. But they were reporting there that also they used to see people walking around with no faces, like they were like what Gary Vee said yesterday when his video in the Czech Republic of liminal people, this kind of thing. So these people, like, they don't believe the research program behind whatever the program was behind Jacob's Ladder was stopped because it went into the spiritual and magical worlds, and they don't go there. As soon that seems to stop them. That seems to be a barrier because they don't. That means it exists. That thing exists, and when you have people who do not even believe that they themselves are alive doing this kind of research, it's like, what force is then guiding them? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. And I would imagine at a very high up level, at the top of the intelligence agencies and at the top of the government, the people that wear suits and not uniforms, I'd imagine they're the ones that do know that there's a spiritual existence, and they're out constantly farming the psychic landscape, looking for people with ability, and bring in, like we were talking about, what was the First Earth Battalion, stuff like that. And, they brought in people who had talent and knew that there was some sort of ability with these people, but they will publicly deny and make things top secret and have clearances where, they make you an offer you can't refuse. Essentially, it's either work for us or, kind of thing where, make you invisible permanently.
And it goes back a long time. That Dennis Wheatley novel, Strange Conflict, that was written during World War II. So that's quite, we're talking about 80 years ago. And in the novel, it's a fantastic read. The British military developed a kind of like astral soldiers, because they discovered that the Nazis are doing the same. So they're having battles in the astral realm. What they really want to do is kidnap a German submarine, get on and capture a U-boat because it has an Enigma machine on it. And that was written back then. Now, Wheatley was a big time insider. He was close friends to who was the guy who wrote the James Bond novels? Ian Fleming. Yep. Ian Fleming was in MI5, and he was also close to Mountbatten. Mountbatten was, he was all up in those circles and everything. So that obviously it was leaked to him that this research was going on in World War II. Why, I don't know, but he puts it out there as fiction, but it's a way of saying it really happened. It really happened, So I mean, they were doing it back in the 1940s. What the hell are they up to now?
Right. And it's at that point where things start being disclosed on a gradient scale to the public. It's like, we know that there's some social engineering being done so that we only look in that the public only looks in a certain direction about it. But us who are savvy to the occult and savvy to that there's another reality beyond this one, or other realities beyond this one. We can kind of read between the lines with this a little bit. And I think it's really weird. And I know I think Cliff High was talking about maybe 2 weeks ago, where the targeted advertisements where they'll put things on your phone or on your Facebook feed that are basically what you were just thinking about. Like, I had that experience this morning, a real fucking weird psychic experience where something showed up on my phone. But what happened to Cliff and a few other people that he's in his kind of his social network was that they had some kind of fixed idea about the needlecraft being somehow a positive thing that they needed to get. And he lives over there in that kind of in the Olympia area at the bottom end of Puget Sound and towards coastal Washington, where there's a tremendous amount there, and down into Portland and throughout the the Northwest area here. There's a tremendous amount of it's I feel like this is kind of like Australia. How they test things out on Australia first before they roll it out in other places. I think within the US, Seattle, Olympia, Portland, Bend, some of the big cities up here are areas where they will try out technologies on the public. So he and some other people picked up on this, like, go get the needlecraft, it's good for you kind of thing. And he's very against it. Now all these people are very against it, and they were like, why does this suddenly sound like a good idea to just go over to CVS and get the needle put in my arm? And so, but that idea of like broadcasting thoughts out, going along with that, would be a real easy way to start a some kind of false flag event type of thing, where before they had to have like Manchurian candidates, they'd have to activate someone, and those are always unstable when you're talking about controlling someone else's mind and trying to get them to do something. But if you can have a mass hallucination of an event occurring, where you can just say, oh, this thing just happened, but it didn't actually happen, and they can, without even needing to blue beam it, they can just convince a bunch of people that something has occurred. And I think they're already doing that enough with the Rona, with it being an invisible thing nobody can see. And it's just like the constantly phasing in and out of this constant lockdown, unlockdown, lockdown, unlockdown, and keeping people in that trauma-based mind control mindset of just put the pressure on, take the pressure off, put the pressure on, take the pressure off. Oh, we're implanting something in you right here by this, this hypnotic sway that we're putting people into. By here's the control, now there's no control, here's more control. And through that, just giving these fixed ideas to people. So if there's some kind of neural software interface where they can put ideas into susceptible minds, into susceptible nervous systems, because I would imagine people who have a robust nervous system, like people who practice meditation and martial arts, and people who are just whatever physically have a strong immune system naturally, they might not be as susceptible as people who are on a soy diet, or people who are vegans who have a low fat diet, because they don't have the myelination around their nerves. They don't have that layer of really hard fat that protects the nervous system the way that like the aluminum shielding on a set of coaxial cable protects that that signal line from being influenced by electromagnetic interference. So people who don't have a strong thick coat of fat on their nerves from being vegan and eating soy and all the other shit that they feed my generation, like I bet their nervous systems are incredibly just wide open to whatever influence.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I knew a couple of professional cyclists, and those guys were like, their minds were like, it was like the incredible demands of the physical endurance of the cycling, professional cycling, gave them these brains that were just purely focused. And I've seen it in Olympic level rowing guys. Those they have the same. Yeah. I guess they're just so much. Every muscle in their body is used that the brain is completely geared towards that. You mentioned an agency there I never heard of, CVS. What's that? Is that like I never heard of one?
Oh, I didn't. I must have misspoke.
They go to CVS
it's a local drugstore, so we have like Rite Aid.
Oh, I thought it was
I
thought it was like CIA. Okay, I know I heard of it.
I don't know what it's. Yeah,
I may remember. I think I remember it now. CVS. Yeah. Okay. When you said CVS, it made it sound like it was an intelligence agency. Maybe it is.
Yeah. Maybe right. I know.
Well, look. You ever see the Walgreens logo? The W is a serpent.
All right. Yeah.
I used to work across the street from one, and I looked at a W, it was a serpent, and I was like, oh, that's a nice bit of subliminal advertising.
Yeah. Yeah, and this my mom's in the chat, and she says that's what MS does to the nervous system. Sometimes I wonder if that sort is some sort of sometimes I wonder if that is some kind of implant. Yeah, yeah, Mom, you're right. With MS, it'll deteriorate that coding off of
And all those things that are what they call new diseases like MS, which you never heard about when I was a kid, and lupus and Epstein-Barr syndrome. They're all like relatively modern diseases that are the very same thing. That could also be selenium and the lack of selenium in the soil, because selenium creates those coatings around those kinds of things. So, but there's no selenium in the soil and the soy.
Right. And it's like here in what we're talking to Clive DeCarlo about that, and he was saying how like a lot of times these neurological disorders are just a B12 deficiency, and people get misdiagnosed as having MS or lupus or some of these other things because here our diet, like you're saying, there's no selenium in our soil at all anywhere, I don't think, unless you're growing your own food someplace out in Saharan or sub-Saharan Africa.
In Asia, it's just loads of selenium still in the soil because of the jungle environment. But you have to take supplements here. I think that's what a lot of those neurology things are, like the MS. I think a lot of it might have to do with the selenium.
Yeah. And let's see. Shelley says, Jason, if you mentioned other realities, if they exist, they do, and I've been there in my car. Yeah, that was just my clumsy way. I know that there's other realities there. Yeah, of course there's other realities. And yep. Okay, so yeah, going on with this, with mind control and just this whole concept that I think it is, there is some kind of tech that they've got out there that either through satellites or through, we talked about the Internet of Things idea with the way that they're trying to get everyone's coffee maker to talk to their oven, to talk to their Wi-Fi router. Like that would be a very easy way to broadcast something that could, affect the nervous system the way that, a signal would affect a piece of unshielded coaxial cable, which is a little copper wire, but it's got that aluminum foil around it. So with that, I wanted to take it into the psychic weather report here with you, Thomas. And I'm going to try kicking off this theme music for that, and it might work or it might not.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The weekend psychic weather.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to this week's psychic weather report. And it's a very clear one this week. This week's psychic weather report is the Hermit. There's a lot of social isolation going on. There's a lot of people who just want detaching from the world. There's a hell of a lot, like we go around, there's no one really talking to anybody. I went into town today, since the first time since I've been sick. The women who are usually very talkative in the shops and stuff, and the people there, I'm like, a lot of this kind of meh thing. And everyone seems to be locked up at home. No one wants to go out. And there's definitely a sense of self-isolation. Now, this could be not necessarily a bad thing. This could be a good thing, because maybe human consciousness is giving us a kind of a respite in order to like work things out or think about things or do things like that. But there's definitely a sense of isolation, the Hermit, and the Four of Swords, the repose, away from it all. And so that's a very quick and simple psychic weather this week. There's nothing nasty on the horizon. There's nothing intense that I can see. But basically, the zeitgeist and the general feeling of human consciousness, leave me the hell alone. I just need to be on my own. And that's the psychic weather report this week.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The weekend psychic weather.
Yeah, but I agree. Yeah, I've definitely felt that kind of pull towards not social isolation, but kind of just needing to play the hermit right now. There's a lot of things I would like to get done. And, I've had a lot of influences around lately that's like, okay, I had enough fun over the summer. Today's the last day of summer, going into fall. I'd like to get some shit done. It's a full moon. I think there's a little bit of Renfielding going on, not as bad as I remember last month. It was real bad. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a little bit of it. And it's just the full moon's always kind of like that. And yeah, Linda or somebody was saying it's what the full, Kim, where you're saying the moon is in Pisces, or your moon is in Pisces. Okay. But yeah, Linda, you said the moon's in Pisces right now. I'm not super well versed on what any of that means necessarily. If you guys want to chime in and talk about that at all in the chat, that would be cool. But yeah, I think I agree with you, Thomas. The weekend psychic weather, it's just, let's play the Hermit, and we'll continue to just get some good shit done. We've got, the moon last night was absolutely gorgeous up here. I don't know if it was in your part of the world too, Thomas.
Yeah, we had some lovely aurora the other day too as well.
Yeah.
So with Pisces, it's diving deep into the subconscious, the fish. So that's like what a lot of that's be part of the isolation thing as well, going into oneself, like saying, I got to get stuff done. Okay, there's been fun summer, now it's time to move on.
Yeah. Linda says deep emotions going inward. There you go. Exactly. Thomas is a natural astrologer. All right. So
it's as good as astrology. If you get good at it, it's as good as astrology.
Agreed. Okay, so our final story for the day. This is from bigthink.com. This is one I lifted off of someone else's page. I had to do this one. So there is no dark matter. Instead, information has mass, physicists say. Is information the fifth form of matter? Researchers have been trying for over 60 years to detect dark matter. There are so many theories about it, but none supported by evidence. The mass energy information equivalence principle combines several theories to offer an alternative to dark matter, the discovery of dark matter. We can tell how much matter is in the universe by the motions of the stars. In the 1920s, physicists attempting to do so discovered a discrepancy and concluded that there must be more matter in the universe than is detectable. How can this be? In 1933, Swiss astronomer Fritz Zwicky, while observing the motion of the galaxies in the Coma cluster, began wondering what kept them together. There wasn't enough mass to keep the galaxies from flying apart. Zwicky proposed that some kind of dark matter provided cohesion, but since he had no evidence, his theory was quickly dismissed. Then in 1968, astronomer Vera Rubin made a similar discovery. She was studying the Andromeda galaxy at Kitt Peak Observatory in the mountains of southern Arizona when she came across something that puzzled her. Rubin was examining Andromeda's rotation curve or the speed at which the stars around the center rotate, and realized that the stars on the outer edges moved at the exact same rate as those in the interior, violating Newton's law of motion. This meant that there was more matter in the galaxy than was detectable. Her punch card readouts are today considered the first evidence of the existence of dark matter. Many other galaxies were studied throughout the 70s, and in each case, the same phenomena was observed. Today, dark matter is thought to comprise 20% of the universe. Quote unquote normal or baryonic matter makes up just 5%. That's the stuff we can detect. Dark energy, which we can't detect, makes up the other 68%. Dark energy is what accounts for the Hubble constant, or the rate at which the universe is expanding. Dark matter, on the other hand, affects how quote unquote normal matter clumps together. It stabilizes galaxy clusters. It affects the shapes of galaxies, their rotation curves, and how stars move within them. Dark matter even affects how galaxies influence one another. Okay, and this goes on for a while and a while and a while and a while. This one is what I lifted off of Anthony Peake's page because I think he's going to be doing a talk about something like this. So I figured, we could tap into the egregore of this a little bit. But this idea about consciousness kind of impinging upon matter, and I think that they're just about on that point of realizing that somehow the psyche, the mind, this human being has effect on holding together matter and the fabric of the universe, and all the stuff that they talk about with dark matter is just another one of those linguistic things, like saying junk DNA or all the other parts of the brain that they don't use. But it's just, again, like every once in a while science starts to stumble upon just a little bit of magic here and realize that there's more, that there's more to the existence in the universe than just physical shit going together, and that Darwinian evolution, the idea that there's water on Mars or water somewhere, and single cellular organisms can grow in that and eventually go up to multicellular spinal columns and everything. But it's just that whole paradigm, I think, is crumbling as we go into the next age, the next great age of man, where, if you want to call it, going from the Piscean age into the Aquarian age, the idea of Piscean groupthink going into Aquarian kind of individual self-knowledge and the ability to learn things on your own. This weird idea of groupthink and just, oh, well, this is the scientific paradigm and this is how things are. It's just like all this stuff is just starting to sound like, bad reruns of an old bad, sitcom from the 1990s or something now.
I think when we use terms such as dark matter, energy, remember, that's just vernacular. That's just the present vernacular. It's just a name to denote stuff in the universe that's missing, which most of the universe is missing. And now you could just there's absolutely a missing force in nature. When I say missing, it's not, we don't directly perceive it, but we know it exists through its effect. Now, scientists and cosmologists perceive this effect because there's not enough gravity to hold a spiral galaxy together. So there's another force involved. So they're calling it, that's what they call the dark matter energy. But it's no different than chi or prana or any of these other, the ether, or any of these forces that are probably rooted in consciousness, to be honest with you, that exist in the universe. There's a definitely, in my book Sorcery, I speak about like how magic works. Is there this dark energy matter, as it's currently called? It's what we're using now. It could be something else in a few years. Is basically there's a shunting effect between the will and the actual outcome. So imagine like if you had a long plank of wood, and on the other end of the plank of wood is on a shelf. It's sticking out 6 inches, and on the other end of it, there's a jug of water, and you push the plank of wood on the shelf, moves in, and knocks the water off the shelf. Well, the dark matter energy, prana and chi, is that an invisible plank. There's a force there that can be utilized, and a shunting effect of on this end pushing that force on the other end causes the action to happen. And this is where you have like those guys, chi, who can punch a guy across the room and knock him over. And you have in all kinds of things, like people walking on fire and stuff like this. And this is just names they're using for something that they don't understand. Now, I was talking to a hippie a while back, classic hippie, and he just said, well, yeah, it's just consciousness, isn't it? And that's it. That's the missing ingredient. The consciousness that's holding the universe together is the dark matter energy. It has to be, because when you think about it, there's nothing else, not in this current framework that they're operating in. And I mean, they just, because material science can't measure or quantify something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It does exist. It exists by its effect. And now they're saying that, it doesn't exist now because there's, what's the reason why they're saying it doesn't exist now?
Oh gosh, let me go back.
That part was a bit confusing. They said well, it doesn't really exist, and then they went on to claim it does exist. Right. It's a weird thing, yeah.
It had to do with the Newton, yeah,
it's information based.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's information based and information has mass, which then it's consciousness based, isn't it? It has to be.
Right.
So the material universe can be affected by human consciousness. It's information. Yeah. So that's basically what it is. I mean, that has to be. On
the idea of on the concept of an idea having mass, it's like you can take that, with manifesting your will magically. You've got an idea of, if you're a carpenter and you want to build a chair, that idea, exists in the carpenter's mind, and then that thing can push, like you're talking about that shunting effect. It can go from just being a thought into being an actual, a chair, the archetype of a chair. And that same thing can occur with anything. That's why in the universe we have complexity. If we want to talk about this on like a Terence McKenna level, that the complexity of the universe is just growing and growing and growing and growing. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like the whole Big Bang theory of it's just going to continually expand and then go into entropy. I think it's closer to just cycles again, closer to what Terence McKenna talked about with the when he was looking at the I Ching and the great cycle of things, that it just things grow in complexity. And he mapped it all out over, I don't know how long it was, basically all time. And he was saying, you know, around sometime around 2012, it's just one complexity goes parabolic, and that's, you know, going through the eye and the needle, so to speak. And then you come out the other side of it, you know, if you want to call it the Kali Yuga, and, you know, things change. So that's why I think now it's like, you know, with magic and being able to manifest one's will, it took, you know, back in the 19th century in the Golden Dawn era, there wasn't as much charge to go around, and they had to really do these big elaborate, you know, Wagnerian opera style rituals to be able to build up this much charge. And it's like now, you know, that much charge is just sitting in the lit in our pocket right now. And it's like we can, there's a tremendous amount of you know, using like Pete Carroll terms, talking about bosons, and I forgot all the little subatomic particles he talked about in cyber magic. But that idea of, you know, consciousness being an interface between you, the being, and the physical world around you, just like you're using the analogy of moving the piece of wood. It's the same kind of thing, that it's just now, you know, we're going into tremendous complexity with the amount of thoughts that are being mocked up in real time. Like the ability to create an internet radio show like this, where two guys are talking to their friends on Facebook, you know, trying to do this, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you know, we would have had to have gotten, you know, spent probably $10,000-$20,000 on licenses and a bunch of equipment to be able to do this kind of show that we're doing now. And now it's just, you know, we're just using our computers and our phones and just sitting here talking to each other on Facebook. And, you know, the level of complexity that exists, I think, again, you know, like McKenna said, it's gone parabolic at this point. So it's just like, I'm curious to see, you know, is this the end of a great cycle again? And are we going to come out of that and the complexity is going to roll off? I don't think we've hit whatever it is yet, the nexus point of maximum complexity yet, but I think we're getting close. I think there's, you know, just so much going on right now where it's just, there's an oversaturation of information.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just like the occult stuff we talked about, where any little witchy poo can look up, you know, how to do binding spells and stuff on Google, and then go out and, you know, work with this and, you know, that kind of stuff. It's like, make the occult hidden again. We got to get back to that point where it's, you know, this kind of stuff we're working on. Yeah, it's there for everyone, but it's at the point now where there's just such tremendous complexity where, you know, like you said, Thomas, the internet's kind of killed things a little bit. It's killed the romance of being able to go out and discover anything. And I would imagine, you know, we're getting just, not we, but complexity is stepping farther and farther away from the natural order of things. And what happens when things become unbalanced in nature? Yeah, it collapses, right? Collapses, decays, and creates you know, new nutrients, or creates nutrients for the next cycle. We're there.
I'm a great believer in that the solutions will develop organically. They'll happen. Like the things you need will, like, you can start, like, so many projects I've gone into over my life, and other people too I've been with, and they say, yeah, but, you know, you say this is what you want, but how do we get there? We don't have enough slates to finish the route. And my attitude, look, we start working on what we have now, the solution will and always did. It always did. Now, what is that? That's information turning into matter. And a great example, I had a friend that I went to school with. He was a year or two younger than me. And him and his mate started a band. And they started a punk band. And they were booking gigs around Ireland. And they hadn't got even they didn't have the license or a car or transport. And I was like, you know, you're not going to be able to get to these shows. We'll find a way. We have to take a bus down and car. So you're not going to be around the amps and everything in a bus. Just by a miracle, the next door neighbor who got into them, listening to them practicing in the shed, thought they were a pretty good band. Turns out that he had a courier delivery company, and he had about 20 Toyota vans that traveled around the country all the time. And he said often the vans would be mostly empty because they were just delivering a small parcel to Galway. Another van would go to a small parcel. And just this worked out perfect, that for every gig, the 5 or 6 gigs that they'd booked around the country, there was a van that day going out to that town. So they had, you want to talk about magic, that was actually magic that those kids they made themselves, because they got a van to take them out to, and all their gear out to the gig that they had pre-booked without no idea how they were going to get there, just because the solution manifested itself. And if that's not that's magic, but that's also information becoming matter.
Yeah.
If
Same
you want
thing.
it, and the will is there, and the will is pure, and you want it enough, you'll get it. And these were only kids who were like 17, 16, 17, you know, and they were, I was quite amazed that, oh, we got transport the next door neighbor has a fleet of vans. He owns a courier company. Unbelievable. You know, they made it happen.
Yeah. And it's amazing how that always occurs, where, and it's like, if your will is focused enough, and like you said, free from impurities of anything else and binging on it, everything will make its way into your path, even if that means something that pushes you slightly off that path, seemingly, so that it can correct something, so you are ready for it. It's like there's always something like that. And it's you know, you're talking about psychic weather and auguries and stuff, and reading nature and reading the cards of life around you. It's just like there are always indicators there that you know, you're either on the right path, or there's something that needs to help course correct you. And you know, nature just is always screaming around us, like, look over here, you know, and there's something in this. And
it's always a beautiful poetic unfoldment to it.
Yeah. It
could be a tragic poetic unfoldment, but it's still it's incredibly poetic and dramatic and theatrical. It's like, wow, am I living in a Shakespeare play? How did this happen? You know?
Right. And we're going back into that age again, where we don't need, you know, constant Netflix or constant something to entertain us, because the world around us is so fucking interesting. Even if it hurts, even if it's beautiful, it's like, yeah, going through those swings, it's like, my God, it is a Greek tragedy, or a, you know, it's a tragic comedy. You know, it's you know, there's so much to it. And as soon as you can start seeing it unfold around you, it's like, my God, this is beautiful. The fact that all the synchronicities, you know, it's just once you see them, it's just there's nothing else like it. There you don't want to do anything else in life but follow these paths as they show themselves. But yeah, so I think that's
Shakespeare was a great man for that. Hamlet sees his father, and his father tells him that his uncle murdered him. So he pretends to be insane and sets up a play called The Mousetrap within the play of Hamlet. And it's almost like how it shows how the uncle had killed his father. But really what Hamlet was doing was setting a mousetrap that they were all killed in. You know, it's like, you know, you look at something like Hamlet by Shakespeare, or Wagner's Ring Cycle and stuff like that. These people had definitely an understanding of magic. It was beyond instinctual. They had some kind of like Freemasonic training or something.
Yeah. And it's just, I would imagine that life back then, the complexity was far less as far as distraction goes. So there was more time to be able to reflect on these things. And it's just like, I was having a conversation yesterday with someone about the idea of the way that, especially in my generation and the younger kids, this idea of ambition has kind of poisoned the younger generations. By the time you're like in 6th grade and you're in homeroom, and you've got someone coming into your homeroom telling you like, okay, you know, what's your career going to be? And, you know, okay, well, this is going to be your career. Okay, so you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a this, you're going to be a that. And here's all the AP classes you need to take. Here's all these advanced, advanced mathematics and whatever, AP English. And it's just like having this over ambition towards the career, this idea of fitting into this societal machine that has all these molds in it, you know, these molds for people to fit into. But it's like, I would imagine, you know, in the time of Wagner and the time of, you know, even going back farther, the time of Shakespeare, it's like there wasn't that kind of ambition to live live a dharma that's so separate from yourself, live within dharma that's so separate from yourself. Is that right? Yeah. Back then you were able to pick something for yourself that, you know, whether you were working as a blacksmith because you were born into being a blacksmith because that's what your family did. You know, there wasn't this ambition of, oh, you know, go away, leave the house, go off to school, you know, go live in the suburbs with your wife and your cars and your dog and your family, and, you know, make your little McMansion and, you know, all these things. It's like I think ambition has stripped away that ability for people to be able to manifest what it is that their will is, and to look at things on a symbolic level, to look at, look at the hero's journey that they're embarking on, because it's just, you're told that all your worth is the dollar amount at the bottom line. How expensive is your mortgage, what kind of car do you drive, what clothes do you wear, all this is all very cliche shit I'm saying right now, but again, it's taking away from, like, back then, I didn't live back then in this body, but I would imagine back in Wagner's time, there was a lot more time where the people that performed those operas, so not necessarily Wagner himself, but the girl sitting in the back, or the guy sitting in the back of the second violin section, who might be a blacksmith or something. He got up with the sun in the morning, probably did his morning meditations or prayers, worked and shoveled some horse manure, and did his blacksmithing, and then he got out his violin and probably practiced his violin for the rest of the day, and didn't have any other distractions in his life other than him being a blacksmith and being a violinist. And on Saturday night, when it was time to go do the ring cycle, he put on his finest and took in that violin. And there wasn't there wasn't anything terribly complex about life. And this weird ambition that we've been engineered to follow, following careers up, in this constantly upward trend like that, rather than living in a life more in line with dharma, with your own true will in life.
That's a trap. That whole thing of the career thing is a trap, yeah. Particularly in the United States. I used to often listen to the things like, what do you do after work? Oh, I'm going to school. Why? So I can increase my I says, but it's costing you a fortune. If we save that money, you won't have to need extra money. Oh, but I'll miss out on promotions. And it says, live your fucking life, will you? And I never understood that. And I had people I was close to were doing that. And I was like, why are you doing this? It's all peer pressure, and, if you're going to take classes after work, do something you have a love for, or something, art or philosophy or something. Don't do it. It's a toxic way to live. Very, very toxic. And there was a whole industry, I remember, in the United States built on this whole thing of, I'm going to school at night. You're working your ass off all day long, and then you go to a classroom. It's like, it definitely started to seem to me like psychological torture. It was almost like, you're not allowed to think and sit and enjoy your life. You have to always be in the machine.
Right.
Very, very unhealthy.
Yeah. And I think it was Kathy posted the meme recently. It was like, I don't want a career, I want to sit on the porch, or something like that. And it's like, yeah, this idea of, people talked about the simple times in, agrarian United States, where, you have the whole family sitting out there at, as the sun was going down for a few hours, just drinking sweet tea or drinking moonshine, sitting on the porch, not even talking necessarily, but just enjoying that time of, being around family and friends and neighbors. And it's just that whole idea has been stripped away from us. And I thought it might come back more in Rona times with the lockdown, but it's that whole thing about don't touch your neighbors, don't even look at them. It's like there's this weird thing, but I would hope that the porch is going to come back again, where if the internet does go down, like we were talking about with Lon the other day about, how his family does a Midsummer's Night Dream in the backyard, and thing, rites of Lucius and things like that. I hope that comes back, so that it's like we can, like my analogy with the blacksmith who plays, second violin in the back of the orchestra, it's like, so you can be that guy, he makes enough money to, put bread in his mouth and, keep his violin in tune and everything. And it's like that. Yeah.
One of my great regrets in my early 20s, a guy ran a janitorial services company in New York. And he says, if you want a job, I'll get you a job. I'll give you the union, job for life. You'll be protected. The salary is excellent. You'll get a pension and everything. And he says, well, what do you do? I says, basically, you'd just be like cleaning up. And I was like, oh, no, I couldn't do that. And he says, oh, okay. And I was just thinking to myself, if I had done that, I would have had a guaranteed money to buy a place, because it's a job, you're in the union and everything. I still could have done all the things I did, wrote books, played music, all the other stuff as another life, and had the financial security at the same time. You know what I mean? And right. And I look back on it now and saying, that's what I should have done. I should have just used that thing for money, just money and security. And then I would have had all the other stuff I'm interested in, all the stuff I could have done, I could have done it. There would have been no impetus to it. But you know, instead I went into night school and learned graphic design and things like that. But I don't regret that. But I was just thinking, like, God Almighty, I could have what I was doing. I could have done it 20 years earlier if I had took that not shitty, but that basic janitor's job in the union. I'd be sitting on Easy Street. I'd probably have a really nice place in Manhattan paid for and everything. Yeah. It's just bullshit when you're younger. Oh, girls won't be into you if you're a janitor. But I would have been a janitor. I'd say I would have, if I had any sense, I would have said, so "What do you do?" I said, "I'm trying to be a writer. I'm trying to write books on Fortean and paranormal stuff." "Oh wow, it's like you have to do a day job." So I do a cleaning job during the day. That would have been okay. There's no shame in that. So you're sort of like you're brainwashed by the system. To like be ashamed, like if I'm not good enough. And then I look at all those fellas that were all those fellas who did that job. They probably all had their houses paid for by the time they were 45, and were probably living and had 2 weeks, were guaranteed 2 weeks vacation every year, paid and everything, and the free medical. And I walked and I said no to that. And I look back at that now and say that was a stupid decision. And what did it? Social programming.
Right.
I'm
TV,
still the same. Still the same person. I'm still the same person. And it would have been a stupid, easy job, But no, there you go.
Yeah, it's the advice that young.
Yeah, life is wasted on the young.
Yeah. And it's just the thing that like the poor young people, like nobody tells them what you just said. I imagine going into the homeroom scenario I was talking about and having Thomas Sheridan tell all these, sixth graders that whole thing of, go be a trash truck driver. You get hazard pay. It's actually pretty clean work. You're just, you're getting, responsibility. You go do something simple like that. You'll be a janitor, whatever it is. Go to trade school, whatever. But ambition, just this idea though, it's so programmed in. But I think it's done deliberately. The conspiracy theorist in me,
The thing is, I had that mind because when I first arrived in New York, I knew nobody, and so I took jobs working in restaurants because I know I'd get food. It's kind of a thing like they feed you in a restaurant, so I'd be fed. So you washing dishes, they still gave you dinner. So I mean, I knew I had that mind already in my head, but as soon as I got a little bit of respectability, and then you start thinking yourself, oh, I better get some kind of job I can. When someone asked, because everyone asked you over there, what do you do for a living? That's what they always did. And I had this like, well, I'm a graphic designer. Oh, cool, that kind of a thing. But the thing is, it's like that line in the Commitments where he meets the guy in the Dole office, and the guy in the Dole office says, "It feels much better being an unemployed musician than an unemployed pipe fitter." It's how you define yourself in your own mind.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, that's some Philip Glass there. I mean, he and his Philip Glass ensemble, I think most of them worked as plumbers, I want to say. And then half of the year they went on unemployment, and that's when they performed. So they worked part of the year, they did the plumbing thing, and then it was like when they went on to unemployment, that was time to perform. And there was just a number of people that he had around him that I think he's still performing with those people. But yeah, he's that perfect example because
I've got an even better one. The Slovenian band Leibach were doing a European tour, losing money. They came to Ireland, and some guy said you can make a fortune in Dublin working in construction. These are guys that had like 4 or 5 albums behind them. They started working in construction and living in Ireland. A band with like a big audience because there was more money in it. And then they saved up enough money to relaunch the band again. And then now they did the soundtrack of like Iron Sky 2 and stuff like that. And they're a big band again. But I mean, I always think, like, geez, that's a really cool thing they did. The band was broke, it wasn't making any money. They were all offered jobs in construction that paid way more, so they did that.
Yeah, and that way it's like you don't get enslaved to the debt that the label execs get you into, with all these non-disclosure agreements, and they make it look like these people have a lot of money. No, they're just really enslaved to those record label execs, and they're signed in for life. Yeah. Or until suicide or whatever. Joe
Elliott from Def Leppard had done 2 US tours, 2 albums, and he was working on his uncle's construction site in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
But the record company just didn't give him any money.
Right. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. All the bling that they wear, that's all owned by the record label. All the clothes, everything. Yeah. The limos, none of that's theirs. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll wrap it up. It's been a great. I enjoyed this tonight. No offense to Timony, but I enjoyed this tonight. This Thursday, I'm going to be on the Nothing But Rippin' channel on YouTube with Peter and those lads down in Galway. I'm going to be talking about, I think we're going to be talking about magic and esoteric stuff. So that'll be 8 o'clock this Thursday. It's a live stream, so you can join in.
Great.
Nothing But Rippin' is the name of the channel.
Nothing But Rippin'. All right. Well, we'll make sure to post that. I know I'll put that in the Beyond Room 313 as an announcement, and this will be up too. And hey, thank you everyone who came in on Facebook today to watch us live. Thomas, again, thank you for spending your Monday evening here. And we'll be back again this Sunday with the virtual pub. So I'll make an announcement about that, and we'll start, anybody who wants to come on. I think, Mom, you wanted to come on. Marnie, I know you said. I think a few other people. Just reach out to me over Facebook Messenger if you want to join us again. No obligation to be there the whole time. If you want to come in for a little bit and head out, that's cool. It's going to be a real casual thing, probably another 2-3 hours again. But it'll be Sunday. I think we said 9 p.m. Irish, 1 p.m. Pacific time, wherever you are in the world. So again, thank you, everyone. And we'll see you again next time on the Week in Strange.
And don't forget, the symposiums are still happening. It's just that we'll be here 7 days a week, but the symposiums are still having guests coming up. Don't worry.
All right. Night, everyone.
Evan.